Now I got a murder rap. Cut through the cap with flavor. Soul flavor. We call the cold lampin. Cola, cold lampin. Took it with the beat. Cold lampin, cola, cold lampin. Cold lampin, cola, cold lampin. Took it with the beat. Man, let's fade that on now. We got Magnum Brown, Juicy Balooski. Man, Flavor Flav, yes. I gave y'all an overdose on the Flavor Flav. I apologize. I can't always explain the things I do, why I do the things I do, but I was feeling flavor this morning. So I started us off with, what was the first one? Oh, 911 is a joke. Get up, get down. 911 is a joke in your town. And then I can't do nothing for you, man. And after that, cold lamping with flavor. I think Flavor is slept on as an MC. He wasn't just a hype man. And, you know, there was layers of meanings in his songs, his arrangement, his construction, his lyricism. You know, and so I always think that I think Public Enemy is one of the most brilliant ensembles ever constructed. And Flav, you know, prior to all that reality TV coonery, was a true asset to the culture, man. You know, and I think a large part of attacking the systems and institutions of white domination is pointing out the absurdity of it. Sometimes you just have to laugh at it. You have to mock your oppressors. You have to, you know, pretty much show the absurdity of trying to hold other human beings under repressive bondage. I mean, who's got time for that? You know, literally, Donald Trump is a clown. In any other system that wasn't a racist capitalist system, Donald Trump would be a buffoon. He would be a court jester. Only in a system that is both racist and capitalist could a narcissistic, parasitic, essentially talentless, lazy buffoon come to rule over what is called the free world. And I really appreciate that Flavor Flav, even as Public Enemy Chuck D would be talking about the ills of the world, he would just laugh like, yeah, this is a mess, but it's absurd. You know, and as Emma Goldman once said, I won't join a revolution that won't allow me to dance. If our struggles can't have a level of joy, mockery, absurdity, you know, and I don't want no part. And there's a big difference between coonery and lampooning. And I do think that Flav crossed the line later in his career, but, you know, he became accustomed to a certain lifestyle. He became used to the finer things. And so when y'all stopped buying him records, he had to go to VH1 or whatever. I don't know the story behind that. I don't pay much attention to it. But shout out to Flavor Flav. Shout out to Chuck D, Terminator X, S1W, Professor Griff, Public Enemy. I mean, the 90s, the late 80s, early 90s, man, they were a true cultural treasure. And they still banging out tunes. I got to see them a couple of years ago, thanks to Wise Intelligent hooked me up, and I got to go see them at the House of Blues. And them brothers threw down. They tore it down. Chuck D, like I said, had on the same pair of Nikes he had on in the Fight the Power video. Chuck D just don't have time. Same jean shorts and Phillies baseball cap. Chuck D is a stone. That man is a rock. Anyway, so we got a good dose of Flavor Flav to get us more hype, but in a good way. Hype us up in a good way. And so we can proceed. I don't really want to have to talk about this, but I'm sick of what. And, you know, if I'm going to talk about what everybody else is talking about, if I'm going to get into the gossip of the day, at least let me point out some things that are not being said. Everybody, love me. Everybody talking about this Epstein suicide. I don't believe that he committed suicide. I don't buy that. But I'm glad he's dead. I'm glad he's dead. But this is what blows my mind. Um, I stated that Jeffrey Epstein wasn't just a pedophile. He was a pimp. He was a sex trafficker. But he got high on his own supply. So he didn't just assault and rape girls. He made girls available to other men to assault and rape. So that was his true trade. That was the true source of his wealth. And I don't know if you guys know, 20 years ago or so, the Hollywood Madam. And when the Hollywood Madam was taken down, they said she could basically destroy Hollywood. We could have had the Me Too movement. We could have had everybody from Jeffrey Epstein to all these other rich and powerful men in the film, television industry exposed. But the Hollywood Madam, she was a real OG. She didn't snitch. They got her black book, and they were able to get some through investigation, find out who some of her major clients were, because some of her clients, like Charlie Sheen, was dumb enough to write a check for an illegal transaction. But by and large, she adhered to the G code, and she didn't snitch. She said, "You caught me, locked me up for what you got me on, but I'm not bringing anybody else down, because I deliberately and consciously engaged in criminal activities, and I was captured for it. And whatever y'all got on me, throw it at me, but I'm not going to cooperate to save myself." Well, some people say that is a noble thing for her to do, simply because it was all adults. Her clients were adults. Her call girls, prostitutes were adults. So her clients, her clientele, it was all consenting adults engaged in illicit, unsanctioned, untaxed behavior. That's why Karis once said, everything is legal if the government can see you. The main thing is it's really hard to tax sex work. You know, they can tax pornography, they can tax sex dolls, but man pon woman, woman pon man, it's just kind of hard to tax that. That's why it's illegal. It's got nothing to do with morality. There's a whole bunch of sexual things that aren't considered godly that are fully legal. Yeah, Heidi Fleiss, yeah, that was her name. I didn't even want to put her name out there because she kept it real. She kept it a buck. But anyway, Harvey Weinstein, what Heidi Fleiss was to Hollywood, Harvey Weinstein was to Wall Street and to the political arena. Except instead of having, tall, leggy blondes who were above the age of consent, he would have children, little girls primarily. And he had a black book. He had names, and he had high-level connections. And what blows my mind is, when I talked about that element of it, you got I had some, MAGA head, some Trumpite, some redneck racist white dude come to me talking about, yeah, the Clintons killed Jeffrey Epstein. And Donald Trump is floating the conspiracy that Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton killed Jeffrey Epstein. I had some idiots come to me talking about the QAnon. If you don't know what QAnon stands for, don't get into it. It's an utter fecal matter, festering fecal matter pool. Or a S show, shite show. Can I say shite? Shite show? It's some nonsense. If you're not a white incel, basement dweller, online anonymous racist, you probably won't know what QAnon is. But QAnon is basically this lie. It's about a person who's supposed to be a high-level government operative named Q. His security clearance is above quadruple top secret, whatever, and he's Q is his code name. And he's either in the State Department or in the Justice Department, but he's a high-level government bureaucrat that with a high level of security clearance, and his code name is Q. And he supposedly releases all of these information from deep within the deep state. He releases all this secret information about the government that the public is not supposed to know. But he does it anonymously. So that therefore his name is Q Anon or Q Anonymous. They call it QAnon for short. And so one of his big stupid lies was during the George Bush funeral. They said that it would be the first time, because whenever there is a high-level state funeral, especially of a president, all of the high-level dignitaries and all of the living presidents gather for such funerals. So when it was Ronnie Reagan's funeral, all of the living president show up. Yeah, I think Ford was still alive at that time. And then when Ford died, Carter, and I don't think Carter was there because he has like a severe brain tumor, but all of the living president, it is tradition that if a president dies, all of the living presidents attend his funeral. And so QAnon had put out this thing on a 4chan, 8chan, Stormfront, all of these racist websites and all of these racist social media, openly racist social media sites, that Trump had compiled dossiers on all of the crimes of the Bush family, the Clinton family, and the Obama family. And that he had instructed the Secret Service to take Obama and Michelle, Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, and to take George W. Bush, and I don't think his wife was implicated, but to take all these figures into custody. And when they come into the funeral and they take all the pictures and the photo op, after that, Obama, Bill, and George would all be in handcuffs. And QAnon was saying this, and all these redneck racist white people were sitting on the edge of their seats watching the George Herbert Walker Bush funeral, waiting for Trump to ring the bell or to give the signal to flick his nose or stroke his chin, and the Secret Service would descend on them. And they really believed, if you don't, they really believed this was going to happen, and they were anticipating it, and they were talking about it on right-wing talk radio and on right-wing racist blogs that this was going to happen. That was just one. There was and so there's another more famous, I don't know which is more famous, QAnon conspiracy called Pizzagate. That the Democrats and the liberals were trafficking children through the basement of this pizza parlor. And it got to the point where this QAnon lie was promoted, until some white dude from some rural place came to Washington, D.C., went into this pizza parlor and wanted to go down to the basement and kick in the door and let the children out. And he went down there and shot this door. He went down this stairwell, shot, and then found out they didn't even have basement storage. So this clown is in jail. And to this day, I got people coming to me talking about Pizzagate. Yeah, Pizzagate is real. They're stealing, they're kidnapping children and trafficking them through this Pizzagate. And so now, the new QAnon conspiracy is that Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton conspired to have Jeffrey Epstein killed, because Jeffrey Epstein was going to blow up Pizzagate and was going to expose the Democrats and the liberals of all their sex crimes. Even though 9 out of every 10 major conviction, high-level conviction for sex crimes is related to Republicans. There have been more Republicans in the Congress and the Senate ousted or having to resign for having sex with minors than Democrats. On the state Senate, on local government level, on the state government level, state legislatures, there are more Republicans who get caught. There are more Republicans from the Boy Scouts. The Boy Scout is a conservative, Republican, Christian organization. They're creeping up. They've almost up to between 8 to 10,000 young Boy Scouts have come forward to say they were molested in the Boy Scouts. The Catholic Church, conservative, right-wing, predominantly Republican, because they are anti-abortion, they are anti-contraception. Their whole agenda of the Catholic diocese aligns with the Republican. I don't have to tell y'all about Republican child molestation. Let's continue down the line. Not the evangelical church, the Dominionist church, child molestation, they're Republican. The Mormon church, Republican. On down the line. Then when you go into these high-ranking institutions, Yale, right wing, Harvard, sex crimes and sex abuses that go unchecked. Then we go into the military. I don't care if it's West Point or the barracks, the Green Zone in Iraq. The military is generally conservative, right-wing, Republican-leaning. So everywhere you look, and child molestation comes in two forms. Maybe more, but the two forms I'm talking about, you have the individual pedophile, which could be of any particular ideology or political leaning. The individual pedophile, the individual predator, that's one. Then you have institutional child abuse or systemic child abuse. That means when a group of pedophiles get together and take control or have influence over a system that allows them to have ongoing access to a wide array of children. So individual pedophiles, they tend to target or identify vulnerable children in a limited space. They target children in their families. They target children in their communities. But institutional pedophiles go far beyond and have, if you're a pedophile who can become a high-ranking member in the Catholic Church or a member of of Trump's inner circle, so you can just go around grabbing women by the vagina because you're famous. If you're a high-level person within Hollywood, if you're a high-level person within the educational system, a principal, a very influential academic or administrator, then those pedophiles that get up to those levels, they become institutional and they bring other people in. They're both bad. I'm not even saying one is better or worse than the other. These are just two arenas of pedophilia. So when you find institutional pedophilia, systemic pedophilia, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be Christian, right-wing, Republican, and often racist. Every time that institution, the character of that institution. Why do I say that it's going to be Christian, if not overall religious? And it could be Muslim, Hindu, or any other major religion, but in the United States, Christianity is the dominant religion. If you go to Saudi Arabia, it's going to be Islamic institutional pedophilia. If you go to Northern Africa, with the madrasas in Northern Africa that have systematic abuse of children. If you go to Afghanistan, and it's the same situation in the Quran schools. But if you go to Budapest, if you go to Southeast Asia, then it's the Hindu or the Buddhist monks and monasteries. If you go to Tibet, everybody loves Tibet. You go into those monasteries, you find institutional, systematic pedophilia, child abuse. And every major religious world religion, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, and Hinduism, and Buddhism, all of them have institutional child abuse and molestation, wherever you look. Because within these religions, they have this absurd notion of sex and purity. And whenever you put God, sex, and purity together, you have child molestation. Because the people who believe in that, number one, you've got to be narcissistic. You got to have a level of narcissism and a level of delusion to believe in God. I'm sorry. You cannot be a fully rational person, a fully grounded person, and accept that, oh, there is this anthropomorphic God controlling who created the universe in 7 days and all that mess. And then you have these absurd notions from these holy books of how women are unclean. They all teach it. Even Buddhism and the Hindu, they all teach it. Christianity is women have brought sin into the world. Women are a cursed breed. women are unclean, that men have somehow greater divine power and divine potential. And that there is this concept of purity, of cleanliness, of angelic holiness. And so women who have been used up, women who have been passed around, women who are unclean, women who don't submit, women who don't bow down, women who don't look at you as a god, but women who can look at you as a peer, as opposed to looking to you as a superior, are not as attractive. So the closest they can get to purity in a sexual way, the closest they can get to a divine relationship, meaning being worshiped, is to take someone who is small, physically, vulnerable, intellectually not fully formed or developed, not physically fully formed or developed. So children become targets because they have this. And even if you look at some shows like To Catch a Predator, where they interview pedophiles, they ask them, why do you target children? And they say, it's so pure. Children are so pure. If you read about write-ups and psychological evaluations on pedophiles, they talk about, well, I'm attracted to children because they're so pure. They're clean. The innocence is what attracts them. And if you read about the Bible, about purity and innocence and cleanliness and holy and divinity, I keep telling y'all. And that's why you cannot find a religious institution, a formal, I don't care if it's a formal, upstanding religion that everybody accepts, or some crazy cult like the Nuwabians or the Mormons. Even the Jehovah's Witnesses are having sex scandals. It's always there. And which political party and which political persuasion has more so than any other political party aligned itself with religion, religious values, traditional values, godly values, the party of God and country? The Republican Party. And just as the Republican Party and most races, they engage in psychological projection. So they say, oh, it's the Democrats who are the pedophiles. I'm not, and I hate being put in this position to defend Democrats, because I'm not defending Democrats. There are some predators within the Democratic Party. There are problems. But when it comes to institutional, systemic, wide-ranging, and supporting ideologies, the Republicans got more dirt on their hands than the Democrats in terms of systemic child abuse and covering up systemic child abuse and sexual exploitation of children. But the common idea is the Clintons are the ones doing it. And I mean, go back to the Bro Diallo archives. I could call the Bro Diallo show the anti-Clinton show. The Clintons utterly disgust me. But the only thing that disgusts me more than the Clintons is just dishonesty. So anyway, I'm sure you all know about Jeffrey Epstein. And these white racists are running around talking about, oh, it's the Democrats. Jeffrey Epstein donated money to Democrats. Jeffrey Epstein was a liberal. Jeffrey Epstein was killed by the Clintons because the Clintons, and to say if these white racists, including Bill Clinton, including Donald Trump, his entire administration, if it's true that the Clintons killed Jeffrey Epstein, that means that Donald Trump is in the pocket of Bill Clinton. So if you think that the Clintons have that reach and that depth of power, then you have to reject Trump. You can't be a Trump supporter and believe that the Clintons killed Epstein, because if you follow the chain of command, that would mean that Trump is a puppet or a servant of the Clintons. Why do I say that? Trump is over the executive branch. The executive branch is the enforcement branch. The executive branch oversees the Justice Department. The Justice Department oversees the federal prison system. The federal prison system had Epstein in custody. So the Clintons have to have the power to influence Trump, and then have the power to influence Bill Barr, and Bill Barr has the power to trickle down to the federal prison system and get their hands on him. So if these white racist Trump supporters are like the Clintons killed him because the Clintons are pedophiles, the Clinton kill list, they had this absurd thing. Anybody that died between 1992, I kid you not, and the year 2000, anyone who died between the 19, nobody who died, even if you had an auntie or old cousin who had the sugar, you had an uncle who had the heart thing, and they passed away, the white right wing found a way to blame the Clintons. Go look up the Clinton kill list. So anybody that works for the government that died, it was the Clintons' fault. Even if there's they have autopsy reports, and it's absurd. Now, what really frustrates me most when people come up with these wild, nonsensical accusations, what really upsets me about that is these people, from Trump on down, when they talk about Obama and Obama not being a real American, being a what they say, a Mau Muslim infiltrator that was put in place to destroy America. When they say Bill Clinton is running, or Hillary Clinton's running a pedophile ring out of a pizza store. When they say stuff about even the wild things about Trump, and Trump is a paid Russian agent. My main problem with that is not because I want to defend the honor of these parasites. It's because their real crimes go unacknowledged, uninvestigated. That's my only problem with that. When you come up with these wild accusations, these unsustained accusations, all of the actual dirt and crime that these people commit go uncovered. That's why they allow for the wild accusation. If I am in the community committing abuses in the community, if I'm in the community selling crack, and somebody comes up with this conspiracy theory that I'm, a Masonic New Age cultist that drinks the blood of babies so that I can have immortal life, and everybody's trying to find proof of me, and they were like, oh, you see Diallo in that picture, he's throwing up the Illuminati sign, or you see Diallo shook hands with King Dita, and they did a Masonic handshake, and you're looking at all this nonsense. Nobody's going to be paying attention to the actual crimes that I'm committing. And that's my only problems with these absurdist accusations. I don't even want to call them conspiracy theories, because conspiracy theories, number one, are real. You can go to jail for conspiracy. If you're listening to this show right now and I say, hey, this is Bro Diallo, we're going to rob a bank. And if you're down to rob this bank, meet me at this location at this time and bring a bag, a mask, and a pistol. And we're going to rob this bank. And whoever showed up at that point and they brought those materials, then you have just been a member of a conspiracy. And we could go to jail for nothing more. We could be like, oh, it was a joke. We had no intention of robbing the bank. We never set foot in the bank. And even the location where we met, there isn't a bank within 10 miles of that location. We couldn't even rob a bank if we wanted. They were like, nope. We have evidence that you had thought about it, you intended, you have the material, what means and motive to do it. So conspiracies are real, but these aren't conspiracies. And I'm not against conspiracy, because I know that people conspire. Most major crimes require some level of premeditation, of planning, coordination, and the accumulation of the materials necessary to execute the crime. Some crimes, like if I go into a store and grab a candy bar and run out, that might not be a conspiracy. That could be an impulse. I just did it. But if I'm trying to swindle people out of their homes, or I'm trying to seduce or get a young woman to give her date rape drugs and all that, I have to plan. I have to buy the drugs. I have to get the woman in a spot where she's comfortable and relaxed. I have to somehow get her to ingest the drug without her knowledge. All of that's conspiracy. Conspiracies are happening all the time, everywhere. And most of the major crimes, most of the major offenses, most crimes, the vast majority of crimes that really matter, not people stealing bread and running, the crimes that really affect masses of people, not these crimes of passion. You kick in the door and you see your woman in bed with your best friend and you start swinging a bat, or you pull out a gun, start shooting and stuff. That's a crime of passion. That's not planned. But the vast majority of major crimes that affects large swaths of people, the majority of those crimes require conspiracy. So I don't like using the conspiracy to dismiss things, because most things are conspiracies, especially at the governmental level. So what I would think we should call, what we call conspiracy theories, are actually absurdist accusations. So anyway, these QAnon people, these white racists, these MAGA supporters, and of course, I hate to say this about my people, but it's true. I hate to say this, but it is true. Anytime you find white people involved in some mess, in some nonsense, in some foolishness, you're going to find black people that are going to join in. White people will go make a stupid Scientology religion, and once they get the religion going and they got the symbols and the literature, before long, those white people are going to hear a knock at the door, and it's going to be black. What you doing over here, boss? Let me get in it. White folks go make a Mormon religion. And embedded in the teachings of the Mormon religion, they taught that black people's black skin is a curse and that black people don't have immortal souls. That was embedded in the teachings of the church, and they even taught this up into the late 70s, and they still teach it now. It's just on the down low. But while they were sitting in their racist Mormon tabernacle, having their racist worship of crazy rapist gods, they heard the knock. And there's a black person. Hey, boss, what's going on here? White folks go form the Proud Boys, and they go form these neo-Nazis racist groups. But when they sitting in their little meeting hall, it's a knock. Hey, boss, what's going on in here? We Proud Boys, boss? So no matter what absurd nonsense that white folks get up to, here comes black folks. It's going to be 2 million black people that are going to join the white folks in their lunacy. I hate to say it, but it's true. So even with these absurdist accusations, even with this whole Jeffrey Epstein was killed by the Clintons, so white racists are saying it, and here come black folks. Even with the New World Order, the Illuminati, the Masonic rituals, Bohemian Grove, all that nonsense that these Alex Jones, Dr. Coleman, David Icke, all these people, Ralph Epperson, is going, they get together with all them stupid conspiracies, when black folks, we don't need conspiracies. They don't hide their crimes against us. Their crimes are written in history books. Their crimes about enslaving our people and dehuming 3/5, their crimes against black people are written on the Constitution. We can pull out a dollar bill and look at the currency, and on their money they have the pictures of the people who enslaved us. We ain't got to interpret the little symbols on the dollar. We look at the big colorful face on the dollar bill and the $20 bill, and there's the enslaver right there. They don't hide their aggression against us. But we rather join with the white boys. Hey, boss, we looking for Masonic symbols within cartoons? So anyway, you got black folks are going to join it. So now they're running around, got black people on the internet and all over the spaces. Yeah, the Clintons. And my only problem with all these absurd accusations of the Clintons, because the Clintons have committed real crimes and offenses. And I seldom hear people talk about the true crimes of the Clintons, the true crimes of Trump, the true crimes of Obama. They talk about these absurdist accusations that we falsely call conspiracy theories. They're not even conspiracy theories, because the theory is based on observed, recorded phenomenon. So it's not even a conspiracy theory, it's a conspiracy accusation, an absurdist accusation. But conspiracies are very real. And they try to dismiss you when you talk about conspiracies. Chicago is rife with conspiracies against black people. The Chicago government, the Chicago police department, the Chicago public school system all conspire against black people. And it's not even a theory, it's not a hypothesis, it is a fact. From torture to defunding schools to redlining black communities to constructing, to dumping weapons and drugs in our community, they've been caught. It's not a theory. It's not an idea. It is a conspiracy fact. It is a conspiracy confirmation. So I don't like using that word, but you know, whatever. What can I do? I'm just one man. I can't influence the lexicon. I can't rap. I can't twerk, so I can't get a million people to listen to me. But I digress. So the Clintons don't have the power, didn't have the power to get to Epstein, even if they wanted to kill Epstein. If your theory about the Clintons putting Epstein to death, which Trump is promoting, which Trump is promoting. Let me see if is this the right clip where he's trying to tie Trump to this. Listen, somebody come listen to this. Listen to this fool. Walande, hold on. Let me bang this out. Here we go.
Oh. It's been going on for a long time. The whole Epstein episode. And I know it's under investigation by Attorney General Barr. I'm sure he's going to be handling it. The retweet, which is what it was, the retweet, was from somebody that's a very respected conservative pundit. So I think that was fun.
That's a bad recording because he's getting on a plane. But basically, Trump said, I'll read his words verbatim. Bill Clinton, who is a very good friend of Epstein's, he was on the plane about 27 to 28 times. So why did he say 4 times? The question you have to ask is, did Bill Clinton go to the island? That was not a good place, as I understand it, but I was never there. Trump also called for a full investigation into Epstein's death, which you can hear above, which I tried to play it, but like I said, it wasn't very clear, but that's what he was saying. It's just a bad recording. He was standing outside of a helicopter. But here's the thing. Trump wants to say that Bill Clinton and Epstein's were very good friends. But do you know that Jeffrey Epstein introduced Trump to Melania? And can it get any better than that? Because let me tell you something. With my wife, I met my wife on my own. You know, I saw her at the Brooklyn Moon Cafe, you know, and I put the Mac down. You know, I speak game. Nobody introduced me to my wife. I introduced myself to her. I went up and said, hey, baby, get with this hero. Cut that zero. Holla at your boy. I don't know what I said. I haven't hollered. I hadn't put the Mac down in over 20. My wife and I, we've been together 20 years, so I'm rusty. I don't even remember what I said. And then, oh Lord, if she ever leave me, I'm going because I'm out of practice. Yeah, baby. I don't know what I said, but I met my wife on my own. But let me tell you this: if someone had introduced me, if somebody had introduced me, in the year 2000 is when we met. And if somebody came up to me and was like, hey, Diallo, I know this sister, you and this sister need to get to know each other. Y'all make a perfect match. And they'd be like, bro Diallo, here's Dr. Mingo. But she wasn't a doctor then. I wasn't bro Diallo then. They just be like, Diallo, here's Erica. Y'all get to know each other. I would be indebted to that person for the rest of my life. I've gone on to get married, and we gone on and had 2 children, and we, you know, our lives are intertwined until death do us part. So if somebody introduced me to my wife, that's got to be somebody. If they weren't even friends, we would become friends after that moment. But I did it myself. I go for dolo. But Trump is a creep. Trump is a sexual predator. Trump is a very ugly person inside and out. So, you know, he can't go spit game like that. And he hates women too. And he objectifies women. So I can understand why Trump, if it wasn't for the $1 billion and the spray tan and the comb over, he'd probably be an incel. But anyway, he wants to talk about Bill Clinton's friendship with Epstein. I know he didn't introduce Hillary and Bill together. They met at Illuminati training camp at Bohemian Grove. Anyway, so Trump introduced, and it is true that Bill Clinton rode on what was called the Lolita Express. I don't know how much folks know. Jeffrey Epstein had this plane that was called the Lolita Express. It was a private jet. And on this private jet, he would fill it up with drugs, alcohol, and underage girls. And powerful people would ride on this jet to what they call Pedophile Island or Paradise Island. So they would rape the girls on the plane. They would land the plane, rape the children on the island, and have all these child orgies and all of that. and they called the plane the Lolita Express. It was a party plane for pedophiles, powerful pedophiles. Like your uncle pedophile, he couldn't get on that plane. You had to be worth millions upon millions of dollars. And so it had come out early that Bill Clinton had ridden on this plane. And Bill Clinton said that he chartered the plane, that he didn't go to the party island, that him and Epstein didn't kick it like that. He stated that, well, you know, I use people's planes all the time. I'm a president, so I can't just buy a plane ticket and go through the TSA. So he's basically like, various friends that I have, influential friends, I'll lease their planes. And the plane, actually in the private plane community, people pass around planes all the time. You try to, but I have no doubt Bill Clinton is absolutely a sexual predator. Don't get me wrong. But if you also look at Bill Clinton, how he governed, Bill Clinton governed as a Republican. Look at the Omnibus Crime Bill. Look at NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement. Look at GATT, the General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs. Look at his bombings. Bill Clinton is a Republican. He governed as a Republican, but that's a whole nother discussion. But let's say he's a liberal progressive Democrat, if you want to pretend that. But anyway, some reporters were aggressively looking for evidence to see if anyone else had flown that plane. And it finally came out that not after Bill Clinton was accused by Trump of flying on that plane, and Trump was like, yeah, Bill Clinton flew on the plane. Bill Clinton, we got you. You flew on the plane. They came out with the flight logs, and it came out Trump had also flown on that plane. And we knew months ago that Bill Clinton was flying on that plane, and there was proof months ago, and Bill Clinton admitted to flying on that plane. Trump denied ever being on the Lolita Express. They found evidence that he was on the Lolita Express, or someone who had stolen his identity got on that plane. In less than 24 hours months after it came out that Bill Clinton was on that plane, the Lolita Express, months after that, Epstein's dead. But literally, less than 48 hours after it came out that Trump was on the plane, that man was dead. So when it came out that Clinton was on the plane, Jeffrey Epstein was alive and well. When it came out that Trump was on the plane, Jeffrey Epstein had to take his own life while on suicide watch. And he claims that Jeffrey Epstein was good friends with Bill Clinton. But now we know that it's stated, part of the public record, Jeffrey Epstein introduced him to his current wife, introduced Trump to Melania. And then let's look at Bill Barr, William Barr, the Attorney General, the man who was only put in that position for the cover-up. Bill Clinton hired William Barr to cover up his connections to Russia and to cover up his obstruction of justice. Reason he knew about William Barr was a cover-up agent is because William Barr was the man who covered up the Iran-Contra affair. I won't burden you with all that, but just know that. And then, let's see, what are his connections to Epstein? Number one, Jeffrey Epstein worked for Bill Barr's father. Bill Barr's father was the constable or the headmaster of a very elite private school. And he hired Jeffrey Epstein, who Epstein came from a poor background. Epstein was a poor guy. He didn't have his money. He wasn't born into wealth. And nobody knows how he made his wealth. Really, everybody's puzzled. But we know he made his wealth by being a high-level pimp, selling children to rich people. And then on top of that, after he sold children to rich people, he had that dirt on them. Therefore, he was able to call in favors in order to protect them from exposure. So Jeffrey Epstein knew he was playing a dangerous game from day one. And I'm telling you right now, know this. Before Jeffrey Epstein's body was put in the morgue, or before the Jeffrey Epstein body double was put in the morgue, before they've already got a dozen people ready to replace him to become pedophile pimps for these same people, because they're not going to give up their vices. They're not going to give up access to purity. But anyway, Bill Barr actually, when the case first reemerged, Bill Barr had recused himself and said, well, me and Jeffrey Epstein go way back. My father, he worked for my father, and then later, the law firm that I worked for actually defended Epstein. So he worked for my father, and I worked for him. And he and Jeffrey Epstein was hired by Bill Barr's father, the Attorney General, and he didn't even have a college degree. He wasn't even qualified for the job he was hired to do, to teach mathematics at one of the most elite private schools in the country. So he was really there for something else. And he came and working at a teacher's salary. Even at an elite private schools, teachers don't make enough money to have a damn private plane. And they claim, oh, well, he invested in stocks. How, Sway? There's no record. And whenever he would go around bragging about his wealth, anybody who looked into his wealth said things don't add up. Because most of his money was made on the illicit market, trafficking children, pedophiles, for people like Trump. And did I mention that a 13-year-old girl who accused Epstein of rape also said that Trump participated in the rape? That Trump raped her first and then Epstein came in to rape her afterwards? And I'm sorry, I hate to have to talk about these topics, but this is what children are going through under capitalism, Christianity, and global white domination. And that girl received multitude of death threats when she came forward. And so Trump's Attorney General, Trump, homie Epstein, and Trump is on record several times talking about Epstein's a great guy. Epstein's my good friend. Epstein likes the young girls. Trump is on record stating, joking, and complimenting the fact that Epstein had really good taste in women because he likes them young, like I do. He said Jeffrey Epstein is like me. He loves the ladies. Check it. Check everything that I'm saying. Prove me wrong on any of this. Epstein worked for the Attorney General's father, and then the Attorney General had worked for Epstein. So he had recused himself from that case when it went to the federal, because when he was trafficking girls across state line, that made it a federal crime, not just a state or local crime. So he said, I can't be in this case. There are too many overlaps and conflicts of interest. And Trump had a meeting with Bill Barr and said, listen, I fired Jeff Sessions. I love Jeff Sessions. He was a rat racist bastard. And I love him because I'm a rat racist bastard. But I fired Jeff Sessions because he recused himself from the Mueller investigation. You sure you want to recuse yourself? And then Bill Barr came back the next day and was like, I misspoke. I'm not recusing myself. I'm going to be all in on this. 100% going for Dolo. The Clintons didn't do that. Bill Clinton had nothing. Hillary Clinton had nothing to do with that. It was Trump who did that. So then Bill Barr comes back on. And what do you know? When they first put Jeffrey Epstein in jail, they put him in a standard cell with a cellmate, which is totally against federal protocol. You had a billionaire, high-profile child sex offender. That takes your ass slam dunk into protective custody. When our broke ass pedophile uncles get arrested for molestation, even on Rikers Island where they put the poor crooks, the poor predators, they put them in a special housing protection unit because pedophiles are targets in prison. There's nothing that could bring you more clout than to strangle a pedophile or shank a pedophile in prison. That's state, federal, local prison. So the fact that they put this man in GP with the cellmate shows that he was in. He knew he was in for it. And they claim, oh, that was an oversight. Oops. Yeah, okay. We didn't know who he was. We didn't know who this billionaire, whose face been plastered across the front page of every newspaper in the country, been all over the TV, been talking about everybody from the president to ex-presidents, to diplomats, to senators, all saying this dude's name, either denying their connections with him or trying to explain their connections with him. And you bring this man into a federal facility and put him in with a cellmate. Look it up. So it was done. He was either going to come out of there in the back of a laundry truck or in the back of the hearse. They had to cover this up. And that was Bill Clinton and Bill Barr. Not Bill Clinton. That was Donald Trump and Bill Barr. You tell me. And the only thing that really blows my mind about this is that they want to blame the Clintons. And if you truly believe that the Clintons are a part of this, then you have to accept that Donald Trump and William Barr, you have to accept that the executive branch of the federal government and the Justice Department of the federal government are still under the direct control of Bill and Hillary Clinton, that they have that much power. And if you believe that, how can you be a Trump supporter? Because it would require Trump and William Barr to be under the Clintons' thumbs and to be agents of the Clintons and to be subservient to Clinton. So even, and these people, everybody that does this that I see, what they do is they try to say, oh, it's the Clintons, the Clintons, the Clintons. Even Trump is like the Clintons. But Trump is an idiot, because if Trump says the Clintons did it, then the only way for the Clintons to do it is to have influence over him, because he is the chief executive who appointed the attorney general, who is over the handling of the Justice Department, thus is over the federal incarceration system, which had direct custody and control and direction of Jeffrey Epstein. There's so many layers there. So when the redneck MAGA head came to me, he was like, yeah, Bill Clinton strikes again. And I'm like, if Bill Clinton struck again, then Trump was his instrument. So do you support Trump? And then he faded back into the cesspool of white, racist, redneck, wherever they go. But anyway, my main problem with people talking about the absurdist accusations is that the real crimes go unnoticed. And another 20, 30 years from now, maybe we'll have another scandal where the person who stepped up to replace Jeffrey Epstein, the person who is now given the coveted position of providing underage children to high-profile people in business and high-profile people in the government, that man is out there right now. Jeffrey Epstein's replacement is out there, and he's out shopping for his private plane. He's out shopping for his fleet of yachts. He's out shopping for his private island. And he's out making his connections and going to the cocktails and tea parties. And it's going to take another 20, 30 years for us to find this guy. But by the time that guy ends up in custody, or that guy ends up absconding to some place where he can't be extradited from, there'll be another person. Because this is a systemic issue. This is embedded in the capitalist system, the systems of white domination, the systems of Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, all of these systems based on exploitation. It's based on military culture. The military has an epidemic of rape and abuse. Right now. They've got whole squads that they're having to demobilize and bring back from the war front, because they're doing more than protecting freedom and spreading democracy. They are murdering people for sport and engaging in a systematic rape. So the Marines have this issue, the basic infantry. And then the UN, they're finding that UN relief workers are going to bring food to disaster areas in places like Haiti, the Congo, the South Sudan. And they're saying, you want this bag of rice? Give me your child for sexual pleasure. So the United Nations relief workers, the people who are not even coming with guns, that are coming with rice and grains and powdered milk and vaccinations, are using those vaccinations. Say, hey, you want a vaccine? Then let me rape you. It's everywhere in the system. We don't have to look for Illuminatis and Masons and all these secret stuff. We ain't got to throw false accusations at retired corrupt politicians. There are many crimes that we could put Bill Clinton in jail for and Hillary Clinton in jail for. This Epstein thing ain't one of them. If anybody, and Bill Clinton's and Trump's talking about an investigation, a man who has literally told over 12,000 official lies in official capacity. And I'm not talking about lying when he's at home with Melania. And Melania says, do you love me? And he says, yeah, I love you and the kids and everybody. I love myself. That's a lie. I'm saying when he's been speaking in his official capacity as the president, has been recorded over 12,000 overt, blatant lies. A pathological liar. Donald Trump is a pathological liar. He doesn't even have the capacity for truth. let alone a desire for it. And so he says he's going to full investigation. And the man who's investigating Jeffrey Epstein's death is a man who worked under Jeffrey Epstein, who worked to keep Jeffrey Epstein out of jail. A man whose father is the first man to bring Jeffrey Epstein into the circles of the elites and set him up to be the pedophile pimp for people like Donald Trump and Bill Clinton. I have no doubt that Bill Clinton and Donald Trump, who are both have a history of being accused of sexual predation against women, I have no doubt that they both were utilized Jeffrey Epstein's services. I'm not saying that Bill Clinton did not fly on that plane, did not go to that rape island and engage in those activities. I have no doubt that he did all of that. So did Trump. Only thing I'm saying is he wasn't in his current capacity as a former president and heading up a corrupt charity that's robbing Haiti. Well, that's what he should be in jail for. He doesn't have the power or the clout or the influence or the reach to do what happened to do in Jeffrey Epstein or to cover up that Jeffrey Epstein situation. He wasn't in a position to. But Bill Clinton's a smart dude. He was like, I don't have to. Because there are people in power, there are people who run the Justice Department, who run the federal prison system, who run the executive branch of the government, who are just as implicated as I am. So I don't have to do anything. I could just put my feet up because it's going to be handled on my behalf. That's how I used to be. It used to be a dude, I ain't going to say his name, that used to run around the hood terrorizing everybody. I hated that dude. If I had a pistol at that time, I would have shot his ass. But then I figured out, I don't have to worry about this cat. Because the way he's acting and how he's violating everybody. So somebody going to do him and somebody did him. And I could just sit back and watch the cards fall. That's how Bill Clinton handles it. And for young people, a lot of problems in the hood work out that way if you allow them to. Practice invisibility. I'll talk about invisibility one day. But William Barr, Donald Trump, didn't need Bill Clinton. They didn't need Bill Clinton's motivation. They didn't need Bill Clinton's resources. So there's all of that. And that's all I'll say about it. Because apprehending individual child predators is not going to fix this. This is institutional, systemic child abuse and child trafficking. You got to do it in capitalism. You got to eliminate Western, you have to purge Western culture, the sickness that is the Western Plutonic culture, Greco-Roman culture from our communities and our people and from the world. Or you can talk about Bohemian Grove, Illuminati, Masonic rituals, and nothing gets solved. I continue to digress. Let's move on. This is the Bro Diallo Show, Q4 Radio, AM 1680, Q4.org. You can also find us on the TuneIn app, iTunes Radio. You can also find archives of the Bro Diallo Show at DialloKenyatta.com. You can even go further back into the archives, over 200 shows available at Patreon/Diallo Kenyatta for radical Pan-African analysis. I do want to let everyone know that I will be on a panel discussing raising black boys at the Quarry Event Center. It's hosted and by Dr. Obari Cartman. And let me see, sorry, I have to pull this up. The Quarry is here in Chicago, Sunday, 1 to 3? Oh my goodness. Why did I think 8 o'clock? I had some other engagement that was at 8. So Sunday at 1 to 3 p.m., there will be a panel discussion. Raising Black Boys is the topic of the panel discussion. And on the panel will be Candace Washington, me, myself, Dr. Sharon Betha, and Kwaku Brian Avell. So various scholars and activists around the community of Chicago, parents of black boys and people who are engaged in the proper cultivation, or what Dr. Francis Cress Welsing called the maximum development. I love that word, maximum of development of black male children. So some of these people, like uh, Kwaku, I've actually been on a panel discussion. So it's two African women and two African men on this discussion board. So, well, actually, I want to invite everyone out, but there's 200 seats, but I'm finding out that there are only, as of yesterday, there were only 10 seats available. But you could still come because you have to reserve tickets, and maybe some people won't show up. So there's a chance if you want to try to come. But I think if you go to the ticket, it's Eventbrite, but it's Raising Black Boys panel discussion. Um, the Quarry Event Center, 2423 East 75th Street, Chicago. I've been there before. It's a wonderful space, and Dr. Obari, I'm sure he'll have vegan, healthy food, and some vendors, some wonderful cultural artifacts and artists there. He always makes you know, a good show. So please come out. It will be moderated. The panel will be moderated by Dr. Cartman and Candace Washington, Bro Diallo Kenyatta, Kwaku Avell, and Dr. Sharon Betha will all be on the panel. And I imagine that there will also be an opportunity for Q&A and discussion, because that's generally how it goes. He's invited me, and I spoke on panels with moderated by him before. So that I just wanted to get that out and let you guys know I will definitely be there, and I'm glad I made the announcement because I thought it was at 8. I don't know why, but it's at 1 p.m., 1 to 3. So it's a Sunday afternoon after y'all done, getting your Holy Ghost, Holy Spirit on. You can come out and get some real scholarship and some real analysis and some real community and all of that. So please come out. Let's move on. Today, the title of today's show was, what was the title? Y'all tell me. We were talking about the declining empire, the U.S. And it kind of frustrates me. Okay, United States, a demented, dying empire. And just talking about the Epstein thing is embedded, the issue with Jeffrey Epstein. But before I talk about that, there's two things I want to say. We just had a couple of days ago, there was an Olympic medalist, a gold medalist, who was a fencer, right? And he won a medal for fencing, with a sword play that they have in the Olympics at the Pan American Games in Peru. And he won a gold medal. And his name is Race Bowman, blonde-haired, blue-eyed white dude. And when they went up on the podium to get their medals for the fencing, and whoever wins, their team gets their anthem played. So they came in first place. I think Brazil came in third place, and the Chinese fencing team came in second. So, but the American team was number one, USA. Anyway, when they started playing the national anthem, this E. Bowman guy, emboldened guy, took a knee. And it wasn't really a big story because it's the Pan Am Games, which is the prelude to the Olympics, and it is a gold medal. But this dude took a knee. And then maybe we don't, the women's soccer champion, Megan Rapinoe, she takes a knee. She won't stand for the anthem. And so I just started looking, and there's these whole rash of white athletes, white kids at Little League games, and white people at semi-pro, and even, they have softball teams, and these white folks are taking a knee. And when they're asked, why are you taking a knee, white girl, white boy, what the hell? High-level athletes, amateur athletes. And they say, I'm protesting racism. Mistreatment of immigrants. Donald Trump, same thing, Kaepernick. Police brutality, same thing, Kaepernick's. And what really stands out about this is not that white folks are taking a knee in the name of justice. It's the fact that so many black high-level elite athletes are not. I don't think taking a knee is neither here nor there, but they made a deal out of it. If they had ignored Kaepernick and allowed him to take his knee and keep chasing balls, this thing would have been over in. But the white man got a God complex. I want to murder you and dictate how you can or cannot protest. So all I think about when I see that is all these big burly black athletes that we love so much, and y'all letting these sometimes obscure, a gold medalist fencer, a professional women's soccer player, a little softball, little league champions and stuff, got more heart to buck the system. And it ain't even about saving black people. It's really about the system. Anyway, and in other news, ASAP Rocky was actually found guilty in Sweden. After they let him go, they bailed him out. He was found guilty. I don't know if he's guilty of what they said he did. He's guilty of being a bootleg, handkerchief head, bootlicking, sellout, race trader, Uncle Tom. So whatever. I hope they extradite him. But apparently, the even though he was convicted, I think they gave him like time served, so he won't have to do any more jail time. But that will open him up for, he's on probation for 2 years, and he has to pay damages to his victim. So while he's somebody in Beverly, because he's not in Ferguson, he's in Beverly Hills. Keep ASAP Rocky. And I guarantee you, I promise you, that Uncle Tom has not learned a damn thing about race and injustice. And white folks will still love him. He'll be all right. He's going to be all right. I tell you, white folks take good care of their minstrels in Uncle Tom. But moving on. The United States. A demented, dying empire. What is an empire? An empire is any nation that exercises power beyond its territory. That pretty much is what makes you an empire. And that power can manifest in military power, economic power, political power that stretch beyond. So if you are elected president of the United States, if you're elected as a congressman or congresswoman, as a senator, or if you're appointed as a diplomat, of any of those type of things, the power that you hold should be confined to the territory of the United States. And anytime you exit the territory of the United States and you enter into another country or you enter into a neutral zone and interact with other governments, you have to interact as a representative of the United States, and you can compel, you can negotiate, you can even partner with other nations. But you are not supposed to have the power to dictate or to unjustly or unduly influence another state. And if you have the power to unjustly influence and compel a state to do something that it otherwise would not or does not want to do, you're an empire. And in the past, in traditional imperialism and colonialism, governments, empires would go to other governments and topple those governments. They would go to Hawaii, they would go to nations or to communities or villages and decapitate the leadership. They would oftentimes, like in Africa, they would take the elder council, they would take the chieftain or whatever, and put him in shackles and make him bow before the European colonial. And they'd often put in a colonial administrator. So the person governing you would be a white person from the nation that is colonizing you. There was no ambiguity there. And so when you bow down, when you accept their rulership, they would begin to openly and overtly exploit the country. They would exploit the labor, they would exploit the resources, and they would exploit the culture. Material and immaterial rape. That's old colonialism. In a nutshell, there's a lot of history there. If you don't study colonialism, you literally understand nothing. You can participate in society. You can participate in the economy. You can even thrive within the economy, like Jay-Z. You could be a Negro billionaire and have a Bugatti and both. You could be like Floyd Mayweather, have all the material things you can want. But if you don't understand colonialism, the history of colonialism, you don't understand the world. And a lot of times we think when we see someone participating or even thriving in something, we begin to conclude that they must understand it because how can they succeed in it? But it's fully possible to drive a car without knowing anything about the mechanisms of a car. You cannot know where the car is manufactured. You don't even understand the mechanics, the physics, the engineering. You know nothing, but you can properly operate a car. And some people say, well, I don't need to understand the car. I don't need to understand how a car operates. Which is, yeah, that's fine until the car breaks down. And the moment the car starts to break down, you're vulnerable. The moment your car doesn't work, you're very vulnerable and dependent on others, which is Floyd Mayweather. So that's the dilemma of black capitalists. They don't understand the car. They just are pretty good at driving it. And generally when they're driving it, they're chauffeuring white elites behind them and driving over the top of black people. But I'm beating metaphors to death, and I apologize for that. Continue to digress. So anyway, under neocolonialism, they found that traditional colonialism was very, 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 because you have to go, and I might have to do a part 2 on this, because I spent a bit too much time on the Epstein thing, so I probably will do a part 2 on this, because this is important for us to understand. You got to understand the core of the disease. You got to understand the vector of the disease before you can implement a cure of the disease. And we have to understand where America is. But anyway, and I also want to share some Bloom information. William Bloom I want to share some of his insights because William Bloom died in December, and I just found out about it a few days ago. And William Bloom, as a person, I don't know him personally, but I was very familiar with his teachings and writings, and he kind of fell off the map a while ago. And so I was very late in finding out about his passing, but I've always appreciated his scholarship. So, but like I said, I wasn't really anyone. I don't know him as a person. So, a lot of times when these scholars they start to age and they retire, even though their writings are out there, it's kind of like Howard Zinn when he died. It was well publicized, but when Bloom died, it wasn't very well publicized. So if you didn't follow him as a person, you just followed his scholarship. He kind of fell off the scene. But and Howard Zinn was active. In fact, Howard Zinn died while he was at somewhere doing a lecture. So anyway, rest in peace to William Bloom. And I've played him before on the show. So I just want to share this, just to show my appreciation as another white man. Take one to know one. I really appreciate white men like Chalmers Johnson, William Bloom, Howard Zinn, Noam Chomsky, and Helen Caldecott, and the like. I really appreciate white folks that tell white folks business. And I like the white folks that don't come in with the savior complex, that they tell the truth to white people for the betterment of white people. I always tell white people, go save yourself. Don't worry about saving us. If you correct your people, by default, you will be aiding us, so go and deal with your people's problems. So I appreciate white progressive, white radicals who do not fall to the white savior complex. I have a lot of appreciation for those good white folks, John Brown Society. But I digress. Anyway, so I want to share some William Bloom. But anyway, just talk about the origins of what empire were and what they became. They found that traditional empires were very expensive. Because if you were living under an imperialism and you go out and you see that there is a white man in the governing and there is a white military, a well-armed white military patrolling your streets of your black country. And so that imperialism was very expensive. And with the advent of, because imperialism predates industrialism, even predates capitalism. And a lot of people, there's this myth going around that capitalism created racism, and capitalism is a byproduct of racism. That is not true. Racism well predates capitalism. You can go all the way back to the ancient scrolls of the ancient Greeks, where they're talking in racist terms, white supremacist terms. So racism is a psychopathic conclusion that runs deeper than capital, and that's why when European nations adopt socialism and communism, or westernized, which they're not necessarily white nations, but they have white identity, like China and India and Brazil, they have the same. So even when they abandon capitalism, racism often outpaces capitalism. In many socialist and communist organizations, if they are not white, overtly racist, they still have white people in positions of leadership and have a Eurocentric Western orientation point of view. So anyway, it became very expensive to do overt and traditional colonialism, because after the Industrial Revolution, mass production came, and where you had machines producing machines. So in a time where it would take to make one cannon or one musket, the industrial output could put out 1,000 machine guns. And so the people who were victims of Western imperialism began to get access to Western imperialism. And also, because European had always waged genocidal, murderous wars against one to the other, you would have the Portuguese arming the people who wanted to fight against the French and the Spanish. And the Spanish would arm Africans and arm natives to fight against the British. And the British would arm them to fight against the new liberated Americans. And then you'd have, later came the Russians, and the Bolsheviks would arm Africans and Indians and Asians to fight against the capitalists. And then the capitalists would arm the people to fight against. So the weapons became everywhere. So it was not so easy to engage in overt colonialism because of the widespread availability of weapons, and then these new warfare tactics of guerrilla warfare and asymmetric warfare that emerged in sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America, and Asia. And Asia is Vietnam and Cuba, where and even Bolivia. And they had the FARC rebels in Colombia that fought a war, guerrilla warfare, for half a century. So with all of these new advents and techniques for resistance, the Europeans had two choices: either give up colonialism or modernize and transform colonialism. And of course, they chose the latter. So what they did was, instead of having a white colonial governor, and they would come and raise the British Union Jack flag or the American flag over Guam, over what's the U.S. territory, the Philippines. They come and raise the U.S. flag, and they get a white man to stand there in his chaps and coattails and stand there and dictate to the people how to govern the colony. And they'd have white soldiers marching up and down the street, murdering, raping, pillaging, and keeping the order. And so they said this isn't working, because now the restless natives, the godless heathens, they're digging pits and putting spikes in the pits, and they're smearing their own feces on the spike pits. And when the triumphant U.S. soldier who's spreading democracy through rape and pillaging steps on that spike, he gets systemic infection. We have to chop off his leg. They getting slick. They raided our depot, and they got machine guns, and then they got the old bullet casings. So they come and shoot up a village, and the guerrillas would go collect those bullet casings, the old spent bullet casings, and reform them and make new bullets. They were like, they know how to fight back, and they know directly who the enemy is. So under neo-colonialism, they said, instead of having a white governor, a colonial governor, we'll let you pick somebody from your own community. In the Philippines, you can have a Filipino dictator. In Africa, you can have an African dictator. I'm sorry, not dictators. You can have an African president, prime minister, and a Filipino president, and a Vietnamese president. You can have you want a communist government? Set up your communist government in China. You call it communist. And you go to the Caribbean, and you can even have a socialist Caribbean party. You can have your own political parties. Yay! And then, instead of having white soldiers, American soldiers, British soldiers, Portuguese soldiers, Swedish soldiers marching up and down your street, we'll set up schools and set up military academies, or even take your soldiers out of the country, bring them to the United States, go look up School of the Americas, and we'll bring your army officers and your rank and file soldiers and train them. So instead of a colonial government, you got a black person, Asian person, native person running the show. And then instead of foreign colonial soldiers, you got soldiers from your own community. Hell, your uncle, your cousin could be a soldier marching up and down the street. And we're going to take down the flagpole. We're going to take down the European flag, the colonial flag, and you can design your own flag. You want to rename your country? You don't want to be Rhodesia? Call it, you can call it Zimbabwe. You don't want to be the Congo, you can call it Zaire, and then you can go back to calling it the Congo. You don't want to be unified anymore, you can have South Sudan and North Sudan. And they let all these changes that were cosmetic. Because despite all of those wonderful changes, all those celebrations, and to this day all over the African continent, I sometimes report on those celebrations. Independence, Ghana Independence Day, Mauritania Independence Day, South Africa Independence Day, Kenya Independence Day, Namibian Independence Day, Nigerian Independence Day, Jamaican Independence Day, Trinidad Independence Day, Brazilian Independence Day. And then you have abolition days, the days slavery was abolished. But the underlying material and power relationships under all those flags, under all those black people in their pretty uniforms, whoop-de-whoop-de-woo, all of that, the same purpose, the very purpose that those empires were set up was to extract the resources, land, labor, wealth, talent from those nations and take them out of the black nations and put them into the white nations. And so those black leaders, those black flags, those black names, those black soldiers, those independent nations began to set up a situation where the resources were extracted and sent. Even places like Mugabe, who would get up and talk a good game and talk about, we're not going to have a white man, we're going to take the land from the white man, and we're going to kick out the gays, and we're going to, European culture is not welcome here, and talk all that chest thumping stuff. But when you look at the underlying economics, Mugabe's wife would get on a private jet and fly to Europe and go up and down, or fly to America and take $1 billion and shop on Madison Avenue. But then it's harder for the people to mount resistance. Because we look at Obama, we look at Mugabe, we look at these other black leaders and these black soldiers and say, they us. And then when we start to fight against the race traders, people say, oh, that's why black people ain't got nothing. They don't have unity. Black people don't stick together. So there was a brilliant, evil, yet brilliant scheme, neocolonialism. But now in the era, neocolonialism has been going on for half a century. We had close to a century of traditional, what they call mercantile colonialism, pre-industrial colonialism, and then post-industrial colonialism, which basically collapsed after World War II. There were 2 world wars fought under the traditional colonial flag. And so now, as the colonial systems begin to weaken, they have major global conflicts. And it might be another 2 wars. We're about a century outside. So the neo-colonial system that the United States is engaged in, that I just described, is starting to erode. And whenever a colonial state starts to lose its power, I don't care if it's the Roman Empire, the British Empire, the Celtic Empire, when empires start to erode, it has deep psychological effects on the imperialist. And that's why the United States consumes more antidepressant drugs, and you got these mass shootings. And it starts to form like an aging empire. It's just like an aging person. They start to form some type of dementia, some type of detachment from reality. And so I want to share this William Bruin recording. We're going to pick this up on Friday, part 2 of the United States, a Demented, Dying Empire, part 2. And I'm going to talk about what's causing the empire to collapse, what black people can do. And now I'm not saying a collapse of America. Many nations have survived the collapse of their empire. Britain is still there. The British Empire has collapsed, but Britain is still there. Remember Greece is still there. Greek Empire collapsed 1,000 years ago, but Greece is still there. Rome, Italy, the Roman Empire collapsed a couple of thousand years ago, but Rome is still there. So don't get confused. People talk about the fall of America. For a long time, the Nation of Islam would spare this rhetoric, this nonsensical rhetoric about the fall of America, how God's wrath is going to descend upon America. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the empire is going to contract, which means the United States capacity to dictate to other nations what they should or shouldn't do. That's what's being lost. But the United States may or may not survive the collapse of the empire. Hell, the planet may or may not survive. They might let loose their nukes and just, if I can't have it, no one will. But the empire, the imperial influence, the imperial overreach of the United States is collapsing. So don't confuse that with the fall of capitalism or the fall of the United States. Now, the fall or collapse or dissolution of the United States, that's another discussion. Or collapse of the U.S. economy, that's another discussion. I'm only talking about the U.S. empire. And these things, words have uses. They may not have meanings, but they have uses. And we have to have the proper diagnosis to come up with a proper response or treatment. And what does the loss of the U.S. empire mean for Africans? How could we avoid, which right now what we're doing is participating and sustaining the empire by and large. The majority of black people help to support and legitimize the empire when we need to stand in opposition for the empire, and we need to prepare ourselves for what's going to happen when the white people lose their empire. The majority of mass killings occur overseas. So when the white people can't no longer go to Iraq, go to Africa and engage in the slaughter, the orgy of slaughter, and they have to come back home. What does that mean? What happened to Great Britain when they lost their empire? What happened to Spain and Portugal when they lost their magnificent empire? Anyway, we're going to listen to William Bloom, and I will be back after this. Q4 Radio, AM 1680. William Bloom. Rest in peace to the anti-colonial scholar, William Bloom.
Policy in the world, because it gives so much more power to U.S. government worldwide. How do you view these attacks?
And also, this is an interview with William Bloom following the 9/11 false flag attacks.
Since those events, the U.S. government has exploited greatly in many, many ways. They have taken advantage of what happened.